All right, fantastic. Let's get started. It's 4 o'clock on the dot. Maybe others will join a bit later, but let's get started. Hope everyone's having a nice day and those in Sydney are surviving the epic heat. So today we're going to talk about the 2024 Healthy You Masterclass. So basically this masterclass is encompassing and the combination of everything that I've seen in clinic, or the common themes I've seen in clinic this year, so 2023, and put it all into like a really simple roadmap, what won't work, what will work. So the point of it is to really get us in the right gear and have clear health goals moving into 2024 and making it the healthiest year yet. So in case there's anyone new here, I'm Sarah Emily, herbalist, clinical herbalist and iridologist, women health specialist. I've been doing this type of work for over 8 years now, moving into 9 years next year. It's a really big passion for me, so I don't really call it work, although it is technically. It's really the idea of supporting particularly women, supporting women's health, hormones. And for me, I really have a passion about educating my clients. The whole idea of doctor as teacher is quite a big principle that I go by in my clinic, because I want to give people as much information that they can then become like their own healer, or they can sort of go to their own natural medicines and not always constantly relying on like another practitioner or an external person for health and well-being. So this particular masterclass is sort of, like I said, a combination of everything I've seen in the last year, but also, there's so much information out there. There's so much misinformation out there. So many different people give you different advice on how to heal your gut and how to heal your hormones, energy, all of the things. But this is sort of what's been tried and tested over the 8 years in my clinic, and also all the research and the scientific evidence in the field. And that's sort of combined into this one masterclass. So what we're actually going to go through today is, today you will learn, hang on, let's start with this thing, what I saw in clinic this year. So this is a real sort of basic rundown. There's so much more than this, but this is the most common conditions or symptoms that I saw in my clinic this year. So things like fatigue, low energy, gut issues, things like bloating. Bloating is probably the number one complaint I get in my clinic. Irregular bowel movements, and maybe sometimes constipation, other times diarrhea, and IBS. IBS is like growing. So I think the doctors just give that diagnosis to a lot of people. But yeah, that's again growing in the clinic. And definitely being a women's health specialist, I see a lot of hormonal issues. So unhappy hormones, period problems, PMS, painful periods, irregular cycles, and working quite a lot now as well with a lot of perimenopause women. Perimenopause is like an untapped area. There's not a lot of information out there, unfortunately, but it is like a 10-year transition, and it can start in our mid-30s and go right up until like mid-50s sometimes, depending on your unique cycle and when you're moving into menopause. But that's like a really important phase of a woman's life cycle, because it changes everything. It's a time of affecting the adrenals, the liver, the stress hormones. So that's another thing I've seen a lot with in this year, is a lot of perimenopausal clients. I cannot not talk about stress and anxiety. We all have some form of stress and anxiety, and even if we rate our stress as low, we're living in a world that is sort of geared towards us being stressed. So we have the news, which is all bad news. We have traffic if you live in a city. So all these things constantly rushing is going to put our body in that state of fight and flight. And then this is going to have significant impacts on the rest of our life and definitely our health. Insomnia is also a really big one I saw in clinic this year. A lot of people have sleep issues, whether it's issues staying asleep or falling asleep. And then lastly, stubborn weight. So issues losing weight, gaining weight, trying all of the things and nothing's working. So there's the common things I saw in clinic. And today we're going to sort of encompass all of those things in this masterclass. So today we're going to learn the easy ways to implement the tips to support the healthiest version of you in 2024. So we're going to discuss particularly healthy digestion, balanced hormones, epic energy, and stress resilience. Now, they might seem a bit random, but they're very much interconnected, and it's really important that we start to see the body as a whole. So if you have gut issues, that's absolutely going to affect your brain and your sleep and your hormones and vice versa. So the body is interconnected. We can't separate symptoms and think that just dealing with that symptom, that's not how holistic natural medicine works, and that's not how we're actually going to heal our body. So there'll be quite a overlapping and overlaying with these things that we're going to discuss today. But yeah, very much important to look at the body as a whole and to understand that that's the way we heal, when we heal the whole body rather than just isolated sort of symptoms and isolated parts. So let's dive in with the most, or not the most important, but one of the most important avenues, and that is gut issues. So why does everybody have gut issues? This is a big subject. I've done like a masterclass just purely on gut health. So if you want access to that, let me know after. But basically, we're again living in a system or society that's geared towards bad gut health. To start with, if we have low gut acid or hydrochloric acid, this is really where all of our gut issues basically begin with, because our digestive enzymes or hydrochloric acid is really important to break up and use the protein in food and use the nutrients in food. It also kills off pathogens, parasites, bacteria that we ingest, and puts a protective coating on our gut. So if we have low gut acid, which happens naturally as we age, it also happens when we're stressed, when we're taking certain medication, this is all going to negatively impact our gut acid. But like I mentioned, that really is the baseline with so many health gut issues, comes back to very low gut acid. The next one is parasites. If you follow me on Instagram or social media, you know that I'm obsessed with talking about parasites because they are really stealth. They hide in our gut. A lot of people don't know them. They're random symptoms. They don't realize that it's related to parasites. But unfortunately, because of vaccinations and just in general, our weakened immune system over this COVID period, parasites have become more and more prevalent. And this is also because we don't have that immunity that can help to protect us. And we all get exposed to parasites. We live with them. If you eat out, if you're taking certain medication, if you have pets, if you travel overseas, you're going to get exposed to parasites. And usually with good gut acid, we can kill them off. But good gut acid and good immunity, we can kill them off. But unfortunately, we've got issues with both. And so parasites come in and they just, take all our energy, take all our nutrients and create like systemic gut inflammation. We also have a lot of processed food in our diet, particularly the Western diet. Not so much those Eastern cultures, but even now they're getting more of it. But the Western diet is actually quite atrocious. Like if you walk into a supermarket, the bulk of our food is that middle section, and that's all processed stuff. That's all stuff in packages. And I heard something recently that said every time you tear open a package, you're like tearing a hole in your gut or tearing the gut lining. So we can't totally, avoid processed foods. Of course, even things like legumes in cans are processed and, bread to some degree, but trying to have as much of that food in its natural form, or like I say, what God has made, more of what God has made and less of what man has made, is a great rule of thumb when it comes to supporting the gut. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. Another one, we have so much sort of pesticides sprayed in our produce, again bringing in the stress link to gut issues. That gut, if our body is in a state of high stress or high cortisol, we absolutely will not be producing gut acid. And again, as I brought that in, that's the whole host of issues, is low gut acid. Prescription medication, antibiotics, anti-inflammatories like Nurofen, Voltaren, even paracetamol and aspirin can have a negative effect on the gut, but particularly those anti-inflammatory pain medication, they can create ulcers. Antibiotics, they remove the good with the bad, and it's like an atomic bomb in our gut. And then like prescription medication, sometimes we need it, of course, but just to know that that will have some gut inflammatory reaction to it. Another big one is poor oral hygiene. So we don't think about our mouth as having impact on our gut, but actually it all starts in our mouth, and the bacteria and maybe mouth ulcers, or maybe fillings or cavities, all of these things negatively impact our gut. Of course, we're all connected. So poor oral hygiene is a huge link to gut issues. So is like just general pollution, especially if you live in the city. Our body is designed to clear out and filter a lot of these toxins, but if we've got so much of those other ones that mentioned above, the pollution can also create some gut issues. High alcohol consumption, particularly in Australia, it's part of our culture. Unfortunately, to have a lot of alcohol, it's very socially acceptable. And this can, create, like I said, like a bit of a stigma when you don't drink, but high alcohol consumption can absolutely affect our gut microbiome. It also depletes many of our minerals that are really important for gut health, and it depletes our gut acid as well. So, and also the sugar, which is going to feed parasites and feed candida. So high alcohol consumption definitely impacts our gut. Seed oils are in everything. So when I talk about seed oils, I'm talking about canola oil, sunflower seed oil, all of those oils that are, vegetable oil based. Essentially, they're in like nut milks, and they're in processed foods, and they create not only systemic inflammation in the body, but specific gut inflammation. And then lastly, drinking unfiltered tap water. Certain states are worse than others. South Australia definitely needs, some work with their tap water. But even here in Sydney and some of those other states, tap water, unfiltered tap water contains fluoride, chlorine, heavy metals, microplastics, and even pesticides. So all of these things can negatively impact our gut. So as you can see, there's a lot of stuff that's working against us with our gut health. And the question is, who doesn't have gut issues when we're going up against these things every day? So here's some things that will not help your gut, despite what you may see on social media, or despite what you see on, Instagram or, Google searching. These things will not help your gut, and that is random probiotics. So I've got a bit of an issue with people just taking random probiotics. It can actually do a lot of more damage than good. It can feed parasites if we have them. It can feed opportunistic bacteria if we have them. If we have like the incorrect strain of probiotic, oftentimes the ones that you just get off the counter are very low in beneficial bacteria anyway. And then we all have like quite a unique gut microbiome. So unless you know what your microbiome is doing, probiotics can be damaging, but also a waste of money in a lot of ways. And the issue with probiotics is that they don't colonize in the gut. So they only work whilst you take them. But if you stop taking them, that's, they stop working essentially. They don't colonize. So there's going to be more important things to do, which I'll talk about coming up as well. Restrictive diets, particularly I've seen with a lot of clients, they're on this really restrictive FODMAP diet. Now, this diet is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. It works wonders for a lot of my gut issued clients, but it was designed just for short periods of time. Any restrictive diet ongoing is never going to be good, because it's going to be depleting your body of nutrients. You're also going to be depleting the rainforest of your gut microbiome because it's so restrictive. So any restrictive diet, but particularly FODMAPs, which anyone who has IBS, the doctor will automatically put them on a FODMAP diet. Another one is eating a lot of like cold raw foods. So not so much in the summer. In the summer, our body can handle it a little bit more. But if you're like raw vegan, or you're eating a lot of salads just like constantly, this is like smoldering the fire that's in our gut. I'm going to talk about our digestive fire in a second, but going back to that gut acid, you got to think about our gut like a fire. Eating a lot of cold, damp, wet foods sort of like just extinguishes the fire essentially, and it takes a lot of energy and a lot of gut acid to be able to break down a lot of these cold salad type foods. Like I said, Sometimes in moderation, great, but if your diet's heavily around these, then that can definitely negatively impact our gut. Supermarket or store-bought kombucha, again, really bad because it contains a lot of artificial sweeteners, things like xylitol, erythritol, stevia. Our body doesn't know what to do with these sweeteners. It doesn't know how to use it as energy, and it can absolutely negatively impact our gut. And also they have very low levels of beneficial bacteria. So if you're going to make or you're going to drink kombucha, you are better off making your own, essentially, and that's not too difficult to do. Antacids or PPIs, protein pump inhibitors, are the common medication that doctors will give you if you complain of reflux or bloating or really any sort of gut issue, and they're terrible for our gut. They're one of the worst things for our gut. They actually destroy our gut lining, they destroy our microbiome, and they deplete our natural gut acid. And when you go back to how important our gut acid is, that's the underlying cause of a lot of issues is these antacids. So things like Nexium, even Gaviscon, all of those things you can get from the chemist. And then the prescription stuff like the protein pump inhibitors as well. Alkaline water, similar to antacids. Alkaline water is, for the gut, not a good thing. Our gut needs to be super acidic. And in a lot of ways, you're better off spending your money on, organic produce rather than alkalized water. And we don't need it, essentially. Our body doesn't actually need it. Water in itself, in its pure form, is neutral. You don't necessarily need alkaline water. And then lastly, you think, oh, dairy is great, avoid dairy. Actually, substituting dairy for nut milks is one of the worst things you can do for your gut. If you do have a lactose intolerance, different story. And, again, there's other things you can do to, counteract that. But those standard store-bought nut milks are one of the most inflammatory things for our gut. They're very high in those seed oils. They have a lot of preservatives in them, and create a whole host of gut issues. So they definitely will not benefit your gut and will not help heal your gut. So what will help heal your gut? This is what we want to know, isn't it? So essentially, number one, and I'm going to talk about this a lot shortly, is controlling your stress. If your body is in that fight and flight, you will not be able to make your digestive enzymes and your gut acid. And you need to put your body in the gear for healthy digestion. So controlling the stress is one of the most important things you can do. Another thing is really important that we eat a diet that's really high in polyphenols, fiber, and amino acids. So amino acids are essentially protein, and they're really important because they're like the building blocks for neurotransmitter production, short-chain fatty acid production. So adequate protein is really important. Polyphenols are things like pomegranates, dark leafy greens, cacao, even things like green tea. They're all really high in polyphenols, and they're like the missing link to gut health because they help to enhance our beneficial bacteria by feeding it, but also has the benefit to actually kill off opportunistic bacteria. So polyphenols are amazing and really important that we add into the diet. Again, fiber, I talk about fiber all the time. Fiber in the form of soluble, so legumes, chia seeds, psyllium husks, and then insoluble fiber is all your vegetables, all your fruit. They're really important to make sure that we're feeding our beneficial bacteria. Another really important thing to talk about is mindful eating. I've spoken about this quite a lot even on social media, but when we are in that eating stage, we need to be focused on that. Less time looking at scrolling the internet or looking at social media. Be present when you're eating, because this is going to not only support our stress response, but it's going to support our satiety hormones. So we're going to signal to our brain, okay, we're full now, we don't need to overeat. And even it's just, about appreciating the food in front of you. So getting back to some of those mindful eating tips and tricks and habits are really important for gut health and healing the gut. And even if you just did something as simple as chewing your food for 30 times, that's fantastic. Chewing each mouthful for 30 times and put your cutlery down between mouthfuls. Something simple like that, you're getting into that mindful eating stage. Again, talking about boosting our digestive fire, I have a whole slide on that next, so I'll talk about that shortly. Another really important one is avoid snacking. So this is, we often, if you don't eat lunch properly, if you don't eat breakfast properly, you're going to be snacking throughout the day. And this is actually quite bad for our gut because we have something what we call the migrating motor complex. And essentially that's like a broom for our gut. If we don't allow between 3.5 to 4 hours between food, that broom never gets activated, and so we get this undigested food, we get pathogens, we get bacteria all sitting in our gut, and this can result in bloating, this can result in dysbiosis, parasites, all of the things. So do try and avoid snacking. Have your 3 meals, make sure they're really nutrient dense and they contain the appropriate calories, but then try and avoid snacking for the rest of the day. Okay, another really important thing we can do to support our gut acid is apple cider vinegar. One of the greatest foods, and also food, drink, whatever you want to call it, fantastic. It also contains it's fermented, so it's going to have those beneficial gut bacteria in there, but really great for boosting our own hydrochloric acid production. And then rather than cooking with any seed oil, vegetable oil, cook with ghee or olive oil. I prefer ghee. Ghee is like clarified butter, but it is like a superfood in Ayurvedic medicine, contains a large amount of vitamins and minerals, so really important as well. So let's talk about now how we can boost our digestive fire. So as I mentioned before, we want to think of our gut like a fire. It needs to have adequate digestive enzymes, adequate hydrochloric acid to be able to function properly, to break down nutrients, to break down protein, and also to protect ourselves from pathogens. So again, we want to make sure that we follow a regular meal schedule. We want to sit down and eat when we're comfortable without the distraction of TVs or devices. Avoid cold foods, particularly cold drinks when eating, because you're like putting that damp fire in the belly when you're eating. And again, in general, a rule of thumb is don't drink while eating. Try and allow, half an hour either side so it doesn't flush away your digestive enzymes. Having a beautiful herbal tea like ginger after every meal, maybe half an hour after every meal, fantastic to support that broom or that migrating motor complex in our gut, but also adds to that digestive fire and boosts our digestive enzymes. A good rule of thumb is to basically fill our body with 50% solids, 25% liquid, and then leave the rest empty to allow our gut to actually be able to break down and use the nutrients from our food. So all very simple tips on how to boost our digestive health. But let's just break it all up, and if you just do these 2, 4, 6, 7 things, I would be a happy person and you would have a happy gut. So first and foremost, start the day with apple cider vinegar or warm lemon water. Goal must be, this is almost priority number 1 for any health, is making sure that you empty your bowels every single day. And when I say empty our bowels, I'm talking about a good quality number 4 on the Bristol stool chart, and it can't be difficult to pass. It needs to be smooth. All of the things, I did a whole post on this on social media, so you can check that out. But that is number 1. If our bowels aren't moving at least once a day, then there's going to be huge issues. We don't have the ability to create beneficial bacteria. We have recirculation of toxins. We have pathogen overgrowth, everything. So that should be your number 1 priority, is emptying your bowels every day. Fiber, again, really important for feeding our beneficial bacteria. A great thing that you can do is have some form of fermented food every day. Rather than taking like a probiotic that doesn't colonize in the gut, eat fermented food. So something like kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, what else have we got here? We've got, even good quality pot set organic yogurt contains live beneficial bacteria. That's going to be better for you than having a probiotic ongoing once, like forever. Have your fermented food, and it's definitely cheaper as well. Another really great thing to do is eat at the same time every day. And this is, of course, whenever possible. But one thing that our body is absolutely obsessed with is routine, cycles, and rhythms. So if we're constantly chopping and changing our meal times, our body stresses out and it doesn't like it. So try and eat at the same time every day. Also, really important that we add plenty of plant diversity into our diet. And that goes hand in hand really with our fiber intake. And then again, practice mindful eating. So that's your roadmap to having a healthy, happy gut. Let's talk now about period problems. It seems like all of my clients, unfortunately, that's probably why they come to see me, in fact, have some sort of period problem. Now, why do we do it? Why do we all have period or hormonal issues? So definite past or current use of the oral contraceptive pill. This is like shutting down our hormonal system in the body. Stress, of course. Women have a lower tolerance to stress than men, and yet we women, like this picture aptly puts it, have never been busier. Most of us work, we run a household, we may have kids, we may be doing, family responsibilities. Never before have we had so much work to do. And our bodies, different to men, can't tolerate that much amount of stress. We're not like little men, our tolerance is less. So stress is going to put our body in that survival mode, and it's going to stop the production of progesterone. And when we don't have progesterone, we have issues with estrogen dominance. So stress is a huge one, and we're geared for it, unfortunately. Xenoestrogens, they are basically everywhere. We can't totally avoid them. They're in our environment, in everything: plastics, parabens, our dishwashing liquid, our fabric softener, our carpet, our furniture, all has some sort of xenoestrogen. But what we can do is remove what we can from our diet, our life, and I'll talk about that shortly. Again, restrictive diets. A lot of women think that they need to totally restrict their calories to lose weight. And again, this puts our body into this state of fight and flight and stress. And so that's going to significantly impact our hormones. And you've got to think about it as well. Our body needs energy to ovulate. If you don't have adequate energy, you're not giving your body adequate nutrients and calories, your body won't ovulate. And then again, it won't produce progesterone. And then that's where hormonal imbalances start as well. I see a lot of women who are not exercising in sync with their cycle. They'll either do no exercise at all, or they'll do high intensity exercise the whole month or their whole cycle. And this is probably one of the worst things they can do. Again, it actually turns inflammatory in the body when you exercise at a certain level at certain times in your cycle. So learning your unique cycle and exercising with it is one of the most important things that you can do to support your hormones. Again, we talked about tap water. An issue with the tap water here is that fluoride and chlorine, which blocks our iodine absorption, which is really important for our thyroid, which our thyroid is really important for our sex hormones as well. Underlying gut, liver, or thyroid issues is also a huge reason why I see so many period problems in my clinic. So what will not help period problems? What will not help your hormones? This is, again, really important to talk about because there's so much misinformation out there. First and foremost, the oral contraceptive pill. As I mentioned before, the oral contraceptive pill is your first line of defense when you go to the doctors and you say, I have period problems, I have pain, I have irregular cycles, PCOS, any hormonal problem. Before they even do tests, they give you the oral contraceptive pill. But it is like basically an induced menopause. It shuts down the communication from our brain and our ovaries so we don't ovulate. But then this is going to create a whole host of issues. So I do realize it is a short, quick fix for a lot of women. And I understand that even for some, they may feel like it's their only form of healthy contraception. But there's definitely other ways. And unfortunately, it will not help your hormones. Anything that it does while you're on the pill is basically a Band-Aid approach. Again, high intensity training, thinking that, you know, the more exercise you do, the healthier you'll be. Again, not good at all if you are, you know, especially if you're dealing with adrenal issues. But again, bringing it how important it is that we exercise in sync with our cycle. Random supplements. So again, I saw this on, I think it was Instagram. There's always random supplements out there that are talking about like having iodine or having all these B vitamins. I'm going to talk about Vitex shortly, but other random supplements, that iodine is actually can be quite detrimental to the thyroid. It's a really fine balance. So you need to be working with someone before taking anything like iodine. And any other random supplement, unfortunately, anything store-bought, particularly from a chemist or a supermarket, has very low levels, and I would say, you know, non-therapeutic levels of any of the ingredients in there anyway. I mean, I'm sort of really oversimplifying or maybe categorizing here, but there's definitely some brands better than others. But in general, you're not going to be doing much by taking a random hormonal supplement without knowing what's actually going on with your hormones. Another really important thing that I see, because I talked about the gut healing and making sure that we're having regular bowel movements, is that women have this quick fix idea of colonics. So colonics with the idea of flushing the bowels. There's numerous issues with this. Our body can become dependent on it. It can wipe out our beneficial bacteria along with the bad. It can, you know, actually perforate our bowels, increase our risk of infection, and also alter our electrolyte levels. So colonics, while it might seem like the quick fix to clear the bowels, ongoing, it's definitely not going to be helping your hormones. Let's talk about Vitex. I'm obsessed with this herb. I use it so frequently with my clients. Having said that, you must work with a practitioner when you ever start taking Vitex, because there's a lot of contraindications. Vitex is like chase tree, in other words, and it is in like 99% of any hormone balancing supplement that you will get off the counter at a health food shop or online. Various brands I'm not going to mention, but they often all contain Vitex. Beautiful herb, but only when appropriate. It can aggravate period pain. It can aggravate PMS, PMDD. It can make you have depressive tendencies, and it often is not a good thing to take when you have PCOS. So beautiful herb, but make sure that you are working with a practitioner before you even touch Vitex, let alone any other sort of hormonal supplement. Another big one, all you need to do is Google how to balance your hormones, and you will get cut out gluten, cut out red meat, cut out dairy, cut out sugar. So there's a real issue when you start doing things like that. In itself, red meat is high in iron. It is also high in protein. In itself, not a bad thing within moderation and eaten, you know, like grass-fed and all of the things. Dairy, yogurt, we just talked about how important yogurt is for beneficial gut bacteria. Dairy is also a really good form of omega-3s, also a really good form of protein. Gluten, I am a bit of a thing about. I don't love it, but sometimes here and there it's okay. But totally removing, you know, like this whole, you know, food group of gluten can be it leaves your body nutrient deficient. And then another one that a lot of women do, and largely because they think that they've been told they've got PCOS, maybe they've done a Google search and they found that PCOS and fasting is good for that. Again, not necessarily. And again, if you have a cycle, it's probably one of the worst things you can do. Our body requires energy, which we get from our food. So fasting ongoing can actually have significant negative impacts on our hormones. So what will help your hormones? You hear me talk about this all the time. I'm going to do a whole course on it next year, and that is living in sync with the cycle. This is probably the number one thing that you can do to support your hormones. And what I mean by that is exercising, eating, you know, socializing, doing certain herbal teas and seeding, all of the things in relation to the ebbs and flows of your natural menstrual cycle. If you can do that, if you learn how your cycle flows, what to do with it, how to balance, you're going to be doing so much for your hormones. Really, it's an untapped superpower resource, and we weren't taught it at school, and we should be. So it is something I'm very passionate about, but that is number one most important thing. And of course, going back to basics, managing our stress levels, supporting our sleep, getting 8 hours of rejuvenating sleep every night to make sure our body can repair itself, our immune system repairs itself, our gut repairs itself. Sleep is a panacea for everything. That needs to be number one, that and emptying the bowels every day. Another one is eating adequate protein, fiber, and healthy fats. Avoiding the processed foods like the seed oils, polyunsaturated fatty acids, so anything like heavily processed, your seed oils, your sunflower, your vegetable, your safflower and canola, all of those things. Again, we want to make sure that we're drinking ample amounts of filtered, clean water. Addressing any mineral deficiency, we can find out our mineral deficiency from a hair mineral test or from a blood test. A serum blood test will tell us our minerals. But again, I talk about minerals, they're like the spark plugs for everything. So to create hydrochloric acid, which we need for healthy gut, we need sodium and potassium, minerals. You know, to support healthy progesterone, we need zinc and magnesium, minerals. So everything relies on minerals. And so you need to really address that mineral deficiencies. Again, another really simple thing that we can do is switch to natural body and skincare products. So I talked about xenoestrogens as being very toxic to the hormones. We can't totally remove them in our life, but we can do things like avoid perfume, use, natural things without parabens and all those other bad things, all those other chemicals in our skincare and our hair care. Try and do that as much as possible. You're lightening the load. And the issue with the xenoestrogens are that they mimic estrogen and they create this estrogen dominance in the body. And then we want to be supporting our gut and our liver daily. They're the two most important things when it comes to healthy hormones, is our gut and our liver. And we can support them by eating those liver-loving foods, which are also going to help our gut. So things like beetroot, leafy greens, sulfur-containing foods, so things like onions, garlic, leeks, citrus fruits, lemon, grapefruit, all really beautiful for supporting our gut and our liver and supporting liver detoxification. And again, bringing it back to that, even as something as beautiful as a dandelion root tea every day, beautiful way of supporting our liver. So this is the roadmap to healthy humming hormones. Temperature charting. Sounds a bit random, but the reason for temperature charting is because it's going to help you to live in sync with your cycle. You are going to learn the natural ebbs and flows of your unique cycle, and then you're going to gain valuable insight into how to actually work with your cycle. So temperature charting is super easy. I'm talking about basal body temperature. So first thing, before you even get your feet touching the ground, with an oral thermometer to 2 decimal points, take your temperature, put it on a chart, put it on an app, and then, bring it to someone like me, or if you're working with another practitioner, and find out what is happening with your hormones, because that basal body temperature chart gives us valuable insight as to whether you've ovulated, whether you're producing enough progesterone, what your adrenals are doing, and what your thyroid is doing. So a lot of good information just from our body temperature. As I mentioned before, we want to be supporting our liver, avoiding those xenoestrogens, so swapping out things like perfumes and natural body skincare products. Eating sufficient protein. Now, I would say 90% of us women are not getting enough protein in our diet. Protein is amino acids. Amino acids are important for our gut and everything, essentially. So a good rule of thumb when it comes to protein is I like women to try and get 30 grams of protein with every meal. So that's around the 90 to 100 grams of protein a day. Now, I'm telling you, that's harder than you think to get. So try tracking your protein intake and see where you're sitting, but it's actually significantly harder than you may expect it to be. Of course, managing stress, which is a whole thing coming up, and focusing on that quality sleep. Like if you can do nothing else, sleep and empty your bowels. The two panaceas for health. Fantastic. Let's move across to probably the number one health issue I see. Quite literally, everybody is tired. There's a lot of reasons for it. I'm going to talk about that a lot. A large thing would be COVID or post-viral load. You know, COVID's put a huge strain on us emotionally and physically. Not even just the virus itself, but the vaccinations and all of that. We won't go into that. It's a whole nother masterclass in itself. But essentially, when it comes to post-viral load, is that viruses can lay dormant in our body, and they basically need a healthy host to survive. So they're never going to totally wipe you out, but they can lay dormant. And then when you start feeling more energetic, they reactivate. So it's this constant vicious cycle. If you've got a virus in your system, it's really important that we clear that out. Otherwise, your body is constantly in a state of fighting an infection, getting better, fighting an infection, getting better. So we need to clear the virus and find out first what the virus is and then clear it from the body. Nutrient deficiencies, I talked about the importance of minerals. Our soil is depleted of them a lot here particularly here in Australia, particularly also as well as we have restrictive diets. But I find a lot of my clients have low iron, low B12, which we need good gut acid to get from our food, low magnesium, low selenium, and low vitamin D. So all of these things we can get through the diet, but we want to be making sure that we're having those foods and, you know, first finding out our deficiency and then rectifying it. I've talked about stress numerous times. I'll talk about it a lot more shortly. Also, you're not having having no work-life balance. Now, I talked about this before, but for women, this is huge. So we might go to work and then we come home and we have our second job, as a lot of my clients refer to it. They may have kids they need to work or dinner to cook. And, you know, sometimes, you know, of course, we can't always get rid of that. That is life, you know. But it's making sure that you actually have a balance and you actually are able to switch it off and allow the body to rest when it needs to. And we women are terrible at that. We're terrible at saying no, and we have a lot of social pressures that we put on ourselves. And this makes us tired. It makes us mentally tired. It makes us physically tired. It makes us everything tired. So that's a huge one. Also, we're disconnected from nature. Never before, especially if you live in a city, especially if you live in an apartment or a unit like I do, I can't even remember the last time my feet went on the earth. And we were designed to have constant connection with the earth, whether it be hugging trees or walking barefoot, being by the ocean. We were designed to have that connection. It releases inflammation from our body. It calms our nervous system. So we're disconnected from it a lot of the time, you know, and so that's a huge one, that we're tired. We've got all these positive inflammatory ions in our body, and our body is just inflamed and just tired. And then also, you know, screens. I'm talking about a screen now. We watch TV, we use our phone, everything's screens. And that blue light is going to affect our sleep. It's going to affect our hormones, our serotonin and our melatonin. And again, make us mentally tired and make our brain really fatigued. So what will not help with your energy? And this is so important because these are all quick fixes. And I understand the pull towards them because you feel like, yeah, I need another coffee. I need sugar. I need Barocca even. I need some energy drinks, you know, or maybe even a multivitamin. They think a multivitamin will just, you know, fix their mineral deficiencies. None of these things are going to support your energy. It's not going to get rid of the stress. It's not going to, you know, support your adrenals. It's going to actually do more damage than good. And particularly things like caffeine, one of the worst things, or any stimulant, it's going to significantly deplete our adrenals. And so we're running on zero. Our adrenals never get the chance to rebuild themselves. So we're running literally on zero and we're using borrowed time. Another thing that's really important, which probably, you know, maybe you've seen more about on social media, maybe not, but this is the dopamine hit. So this we think gives us instant energy, but essentially it's the dopamine hit from things like social media, sugar, TV, binge watching on Netflix. And essentially dopamine brings about quick pleasure to the brain. And then basically we get this significant come down. But because we've got that instant pleasure, our body's constantly trying to seek out more dopamine. And so we get this instant reward and then this constant sort of addiction and seeking out of it. And then when we're constantly exposed to it, our pleasure producing stimuli in our brain, it's not going to reach that. It needs more to reach that happy or that stimulated effect. So that old just scrolling on social media no longer is enough, or just playing the games no longer enough. We need faster and quicker. And that's why reels on social media is so good, because they're fast. It's like this dopamine hit where our body or our brain is absolutely addicted to dopamine. Some more than others, if there are things like ADHD or, basically ADHD. If there's anything like that, then you're going to have even more sort of obsession with dopamine. But even all of us, because it's that reward or the pleasure hormone that we get when we seek pleasure, we become addicted. And it will not help our energy. In fact, it will do the opposite. It can lead to things like depression, fatigue, irritability, anxiety, and insomnia. So what will help your energy? Now, interestingly, posture. Posture is a big one. Like most of us, at least me, sit at a desk for a lot of the day. We're slouching over. Maybe we're looking at our phone at the end of the day. We're slouching over, watching TV. We're all slouching over. We need to make sure we have an upright posture, and this can instantly improve our mood and instantly reduce our fatigue. It also encourages like the dilation of our diaphragm, and so we're going to have more deep belly breaths when we have an upright posture. And so this is going to encourage more circulation and support our nervous system as well. So focus on your posture. It's a big one. Hydration, aiming for 3 litres. Sounds a lot, but 3 litres of fluid daily. They can include beautiful herbal teas. In fact, they should include beautiful herbal teas. And it's interesting to know that even the smallest amount of dehydration can lead to fatigue. It's almost like the first thing you feel when you're dehydrated is tired. Making sure, I've spoken about it with everything, but adequate sleep. Again, sleep and bowels. Let's get those two working properly, and you'll find that a lot of things will be working properly. And getting into sunlight, especially first thing on rising, really, really important, even more important on a cloudy, overcast day. But most of the time, we want to be getting into the sunlight, because that's going to trigger our neurotransmitters like serotonin, which is going to support energy production in the brain. Again, making sure that we're having plenty of protein and fresh vegetables. Exercise, daily steps. Now, it's really important when you're fatigued or you're low on energy that you're doing exercise that is restorative, not exhaustive. So this is, again, coming back to exercising in sync with the cycle. But if you just get your daily steps in, aim for 8, 10, 5K steps daily, incidental movement throughout the day, have a little boogie, have a little dance. You're going to be giving your body oxygen. You're going to be flooding your body with neurotransmitters and endorphins, and it's going to support energy. And there's a lot of research to show that exercise, the benefits of exercise, can last like days. So for happy energy, get your exercise on. And then another really important one is social media and device timeouts. Super important. So here is your roadmap to epic energy. Getting some daily movement in. As I mentioned before, walking's great, dancing's great, weight-bearing exercises, even if it's just body weight exercising, all really good to support in endorphins and neurotransmitter production. But remember, the key thing I want you to remember is restorative exercise, not exhausting exercise. Again, aiming for that upright position or upright posture. I said 2 litres. I'm going to say 3 litres of clear fluid. Protein at breakfast and lunch. Don't just have coffee and then some toast. You need to make breakfast like your most important meal. It needs to have 30 grams of protein, 3 eggs, or a protein shake with protein powder that's good quality. There's plenty of protein breakfast out there, but really important that you're getting 30 grams of protein for breakfast and for lunch. I find that one of the first things my clients notice is when they start having protein at breakfast, they don't get the 2 o'clock, 3 p.m. energy slump in the afternoon. Again, aim to be asleep by 10. I would say earlier, most of us that's impossible, but 10 is latest. You know, the hours before midnight are worth double those after for restoring our brain and supporting energy. Again, I mentioned it maybe before, but getting sunlight exposure, particularly outside, and then taking a break from screens or digital detox. And on that note, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in the next one. We're going to talk about stress. So why are we all stressed? Again, everybody's stressed. And even if you don't feel stressed, you're stressed. Your body's stressed. We have everything. Cost of living, no downtime. We live in a city, or some of us do anyway. Relationship issues, past traumas, living in survival mode. So that could mean running from here to there, meeting deadlines, you know, grocery shopping in highly stimulated, you know, noise every time you get out the house, living near a road. You get the picture. Poor sleep, blood sugar instability is a huge one, over-exercising, and pollution. So pollution, you might not feel is stressing you, but it's stressing you internally. It's stressing your hormones, it's stressing your body, it's creating oxidative damage in the body, which is going to result in more cortisol and result in that body feeling stressed. Just on that blood sugar instability, again, I could have a whole masterclass on this, but essentially when our blood sugar drops, our body tries to bring it up because it's a survival thing, and it pumps out adrenaline and cortisol, so those fight and flight hormones. And it can take quite a while for those to come back down. So that's a big one. That's why we're all stressed. In fact, it's probably a better question to ask, like, who isn't stressed these days? What won't help with your stress levels? And this is really important. More caffeine. I've said this before. We think, okay, well, I'm stressed, I'll have another coffee, it'll get me through the day, I can meet that deadline, I'll feel great. Terrible. Sugar as well. Oftentimes when we crave sugar, it's instant energy when we're stressed, but one of the worst things you can do for your adrenal glands. Here again, I talk about those dopamine hits. So scrolling on social media, you might feel, oh, at the end of the day, it detoxes my brain and it calms my nervous system. I feel less stressed. But you're actually adding to that vicious dopamine addictive cycle, which is going to deplete your adrenals and create more stress in the body. Again, alcohol. A lot of my clients, they say to me, Sarah, I need alcohol at the end of the day. It helps me to de-stress. And it's not even, again, it's socially acceptable and it's part of our Aussie culture, but that's a huge one. And that will not help your stress levels. It will impact your sleep negatively. It will deplete your body of minerals, and it will definitely impact your gut. So that's a big one. Another one is saying yes to everybody and no boundaries. I say this again, this is very common for us women. We don't know how to, a lot of us anyway, maybe some better than others, but not putting our boundaries in place. We're trying to appease everyone. We feel like when we appease everyone, we're keeping the peace and it's going to reduce our stress levels, prevent conflict. But instead, we're having this inner conflict. We're saying yes when we really mean no. And that is going to tell our body that we're stressed. That's going to tell our nervous system, our amygdala, that we're stressed because we're saying yes when our body wants us to say no. So you're putting this sort of constant inner conflict happening in the body. And remembering, really important, that we are a priority. Now, another really important one is anger. So a lot of us get angry when we get stressed. It's like a natural sort of fight and flight. So fight, a natural stress response. We get angry, maybe we beat someone in traffic or we get impatient. But it's very interesting. The research suggests that 2 minutes or one bout of anger, or 2 minutes, can take 7 hours for our body to recalibrate from the cortisol. And so this can weaken our immune system, this weakens our hormones, it weakens our gut, and it takes all of our energy away from our gut and goes to our peripheral, so our hands and feet, ready to fight and flight. So anger, huge one when it comes to stress. So what will help you to build stress resilience? So stress resilience is this idea that our body can bounce back from stress and we won't have a negative reaction to it and we won't be detrimental to our health. So I say this because we, as I mentioned before, we can't remove all the stresses in our life. It's impossible. But we can do a lot of things to build our stress resilience. Daily exercise, neurotransmitters, endorphins, they're all built. We have a beautiful class of herbal medicines called adaptogens. Maybe you've heard of them. The things like licorice root, withania, romania, Tulsi or holy basil. There's many of them, but they can be taken in herbal tea form. Instead of your coffee, have like a nice holy basil or Tulsi tea. Beautiful way to support our adrenal glands and support our stress resilience. Another really important thing is to build social connections. We often can self-isolate sometimes if we get a bit stressed, but that's probably one of the worst things. Again, I was listening to something, isolation with COVID has been one of the worst things for people, and that's created stress. So build social connections where you feel like you're with your tribe and your people, and they build you up and they make you feel really good. Of course, one thing I definitely wanted to talk about, because I'm running out of time, but one thing I definitely want to talk about is the importance of building gratitude and an opportunistic outlook. Not opportunistic, an optimistic outlook, but gratitude and optimistic outlook. So basically, gratitude is the opposite of anxiety. There's a lot of research to say that when we are mentally focused on joy and gratitude, our nervous system cannot be stressed and anxious at the same time. And gratitude is like lubrication for our brain. It just absolutely loves it. And gratitude is better when it's expressed. So doing things like a gratitude journal, writing a card to someone, saying thank you to someone, it actually builds, it floods our brain with our hypothalamus with dopamine, but it's a good dopamine hit, not that sort of one where we're you are constantly seeking dopamine, but you can constantly be grateful and then you're constantly getting dopamine. So it's a good dopamine hit. Another great one, which I talk about frequently, is dancing. Dancing is one of the greatest things. Even just listening to music can calm your brain. It can provide mental distraction, can reduce our stress hormones. And then dancing as well, you're getting that physical benefit of moving the body and getting those endorphins as well. So here is your roadmap to stress management. Number one is identify your triggers. So you can do this by journaling. It's a really good way of finding out what your triggers are for stress. You can have emotional and physical triggers. Find out what they are, and then you know how to work on them, essentially. Aim for 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep every night. I've said that through every single one of these things. I've mentioned sleep. It's imperative. Again, practice gratitude every day. A gratitude journal is great for this. Getting out into nature. This is harder when you're in the city, so you have to make a conscious effort to do it. But getting out into nature is imperative. Even bringing nature into your environment if you have to. That's your only option. But, green space, there's a lot of research that even the color green instantly relaxes our brain. Again, getting physical exercise in daily, imperative, building those social connections. And one thing I wanted to do, and I wanted to talk about this quite actually, is laughter. So there's a lot of, and it's like, how can you just laugh? But watch a funny movie, hang out with funny people. Laughing is one of the greatest medicines, and that's an ancient sort of saying for a lot of years. But essentially, it enhances oxygen, it stimulates our heart, our lungs, our muscles, it increases endorphins in our brain, it soothes tension, it can stimulate our nervous system and support our nervous system and our immune system, it relieves pain, like quite literally it does everything. So laugh more often, as random as that sounds. Laugh more often. It's a great thing that you can do to build stress resilience and to just calm the body. So now we have discussed all of the things. So this is your roadmap to Healthy You in 2024. We want to break it down into 2, 4, 6, 7 things. Support your gut. Number 1, eating plenty of fiber and avoiding processed foods whenever possible. Aim for 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep every night. Again, what are the 2 things? Empty your bowels and get sleep. Practice gratitude daily. Really important. We talked about the importance of that. Aim to move your body every single day, whether it is going for a walk, whether it's weights, whether it's dancing. Some sort of exercise that is restorative, not exhausting, is really important. If you're a woman who has a cycle, you must live in sync with your cycle. The most important thing I can say for healthy hormones, it starts with that. If you can live in sync with your cycle, you're going to be having a fantastic way of balancing your hormones. Living as cleanly as possible, and I mean by, again, avoiding our exposure to xenoestrogens in whatever way we possibly can. So avoiding plastics, avoiding your parabens, avoiding synthetic fragrances, avoiding perfumes, and using natural clean products. Our body is amazing at getting rid of these toxins, but if it's being overloaded with everything else, it's going to be you've got a sluggish body. And so we want to lighten the load by removing these things as much as we possibly can. And then lastly, this is a big one. If you just do this going into 2024, I'll be happy. But as women, we need to set healthy boundaries. We need to say no when we want to and when we need to, and we need to focus on ourselves first. I often say this to my clients, but you can't pour from an empty cup. If you're always looking after everyone else first, but you're depleted, you're going to reach burnout, and then the family and everything won't survive. So set those healthy boundaries. And again, journaling is a great way of finding out what your issues are and how to set those healthy boundaries. So that's it. That's the end of the 2024 Healthy You Masterclass. I want to jump in and say that I have a very special offer at the moment, my Health Reset special offer. This is more designed for people who I haven't worked with, so new clients. Unless I haven't seen you in the last sort of 6 to 12 months, this would be great. But it is more for those sort of clients who haven't worked with me before or have been wanting to. It's like, your whole encompassing package. You get your initial consultation where you get all of the fact finding. You get a personalized treatment plan. You get a personalized herbal medicine of choice, so whether it's liquid herbs or a herbal tea. You get a discount on any supplements prescribed. You get a 20-minute follow-up session. So that's where you can ask me all of your questions. We can go through the treatment plan, find out what's working, what's not, and adjust it. And that happens about 2 weeks after that initial consult. And finally, you get access to my amazing Foundations for Health Masterclass, which is about an hour, if not an hour and a half worth of solid information on how to do the basics. So how to exercise, how to eat properly, how to sleep, how to stress, how to detox, all of the foundations, like the basics of being a healthy you, are all in that masterclass. So that's all included. I have it's valued at over $350. For now, for the next week until the start of January, it's going to be I'm doing a special for $290, but in the new year it will go up. So if you're interested in that, if you've got any questions, feel free to touch base with me. Like I said, it'll only be available until the end of December. You don't need to book, you don't need to have the appointment because I'm finished anyway and I'm booked out. But you can have the appointment in January, that's fine. But it needs to be booked now, essentially. But any questions, touch base with me and we can go from there. So let me do this. Stop the share screen and then ask anyone if they've got any questions. The floor is open. Hey, Linda. How are you?
I've got a quick question. So the internet cut out at a point you were talking about how to build fire in your stomach, and you were talking about you I don't know what it was you said. Potentially, would it have been apple cider vinegar that you mentioned? To build the acid?
Yeah, definitely. So building your digestive fire is definitely apple cider vinegar. And then also doing things like having your, I'm just bringing it back to that. And then also doing things like having your, something like a cinnamon, ginger, or black pepper tea about 30 minutes after your meal.
Okay, so that's the bit I missed.
Yeah, and then I'll send you a recording of this anyway, Linda, but also things like, like ghee in cooking stimulates your digestive fire, not drinking water, not having too many cold foods, things like that. But apple cider vinegar is one of the best things you can do, and ginger tea.
Okay, thank you. It was very, very informative again, as usual. Thank you. I like your fast pace.
Thanks, Linda. Yeah, I mean, I'm always, I felt like I went over time. There was so much more information, but, Thank you. Anyone else got any questions? And yeah, welcome, Annie.
Not really a question. Apologies, technical issues. So I was missed half of it, but you've got the recording anyway, haven't you?
I do. Yeah, I do. Yeah. But any questions from what you did get?
No, I was just a little bit interested in the one that you were mentioning for little dogs coming looking after a friend's dog. I was really interested in what you were saying for the de-stressing part of it, and interested in the appointment that you were talking about for next year.
Yeah, sure thing.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll send the recording, and I'll send just like an email after this with like that more of that information about the health reset. But yeah,
health reset, that's what it was. Sorry, I came in a little bit halfway through.
Yeah, no worries. I think Friday's probably not the best time for a lot of people, but it was the only time I could do this time. So, but yeah.
Oh yeah, those I had and then there was tech issues, and then our computers just decide they want to update, and then Zoom wants to update just to add the pressure.
Always.
And we've had a bit of dodgy internet because there's been roadwork tech work going on with Telstra. So
no worries, Annie. Yeah, I'll send it for sure. Yeah, okay. So Rocio, I think you were first up with your hand.
Yes, Sarah, I just wanted to know if you could quickly summarize and tell us, how do you clear viruses from your system that you were speaking about? How do we do that?
A really good question. So it's a hard one. So you're looking at first finding out what is your virus. So you can get a viral panel from the GP, which is covered by Medicare. They are more reluctant these days to do it. But you can ask for a viral panel, and that will have things like your Epstein-Barr, your Ross River fever, cyclomedia virus, and even COVID. And it will see if you've had the antibodies or if it's present, even your herpes simplex virus and things like that. So finding out what virus you've got is paramount. And then there are specific herbs that can clear those viruses, but they're like specific herbs to each virus. Yeah, but then on like the short term as well, you would also be looking at like someone who's, for example, someone who's had COVID, you'll be looking at making sure you're doing medicinal mushrooms. So shiitake mushroom, reishi mushroom, you can get them in powders. They're going to support your innate immunity. They're going to flush your, boost your white blood cells. And then I'll also be looking at things like blood cleansers. So high chlorophyll or high chlorella rich foods. So even chlorophyll, alfalfa sprouts, beetroot that cleanse the blood as well. Yeah, but essentially it's the immunity, and it can be quite a hard one because, like I said, viruses, they attach themselves to calcium and hide. So it's really random. So your body, you need to be prepared to get worse before you get better when you clear a virus out, because they hide in the system, and every time you start feeling a bit better, they rear their head. Because that's how they survive, off their host.
Okay. Yeah, so I was worried because I think many people are getting shingles at the moment, and I just would like to avoid that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. A lot of people got shingles at the moment. And in fact, shingles you can also get tested for. So the thing with shingles is that you're looking at things like lysine and you're looking at vitamin C. High amounts of vitamin C in the diet. So you're having grapefruit, you're having citrus fruits. And the thing with vitamin C is that it's better not to be cooked. So having like juicing your own citrus fruit is fantastic.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Fantastic. Beth, I think you were next up.
Hey, Sarah.
Yeah. No worries, just quickly. No worries, Erin. Thank you.
Just two things. I know you make gorgeous teas, but some of these ones, like the licorice root and the tulsi and the basil and that, do you just do them straight?
Me personally, will I drink them straight? Yeah.
No, do you do that with Miss Chai? Is that one of try them?
So some of them I do. Things like Romania and Ruthania I wouldn't have as a tea because you need alcohol to extract the constituents. But things like your holy basil and your licorice root, yeah, definitely. So holy basil and tulsi are the same thing.
Okay, cool. So if I jump online, you've got them?
No, just send me a message, Beck, and I'll send it to you. Yeah.
And second, with phyto
Polyphenols.
polyphenols, that's the one. With greens, for example, powdered greens.
Yeah.
Are they advantageous? Because like over the years, I've always bought good quality ones with chlorophyll and chlorella and all those things in it. Are they advantageous to take sort of on a, like in your smoothie, for example?
Yeah. So good question. I would say yes, but I would be saying I would just choose one. So for example, chlorella's I would just do like a month of chlorella, finished chlorella, a month of spirulina, finished spirulina, a month of barley grass, as opposed to like all of them in one, because then I think the cheapest one is barley grass, and you'll find that that's like 70% of it, and then like small, like minute amounts of like the others. So yeah, does that make sense? I don't particularly love those super green powders that have like 20 million ingredients, because nothing's therapeutic dose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. No, but I don't have any. I haven't had any for a long time, but you just got me thinking when we were talking a bit more about polyphenols.
Yeah.
Obviously more in raw foods, natural foods. But
yeah,
I'm sure that sort of would fall under the same category.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else that you can do is like pomegranate juice.
Yeah.
Go to a Persian supermarket, which you're near, and
yeah,
get your pomegranate juice is sensational. Very high.
Great. Thanks, Sarah.
No worries, Beck. Yeah. Fantastic. I think, I'm not sure who was next, but Jess?
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for the webinar.
No worries.
I just had a question about brain fog. Is that something that's associated more with a hormonal problem, or is it kind of just across the board a general stress problem, or just brain fog?
Yeah, really good question. So it could be numerous things. So essentially brain fog, though, will come back to like neural inflammation. So inflammation in the brain. So definitely want to be looking at your thyroid. There's a lot of like T3 receptors in our brain, iodine receptors in our brain. So, and the thyroid. So that's a big one, looking at your thyroid. And then definitely like, if your sex hormones for sure. If you're a mum, or or if you're in that perimenopausal phase, any drops in estrogen or any times where estrogen's a bit, you can get brain fog, because estrogen also has a neuroprotective effect on the brain. And then of course, definitely stress, sleep, and then mineral deficiency like omega-3. Our brain's the fattiest organ, so often if we don't have enough fat in our diet, it's almost like it's starving our brain, and brain fog is common.
Okay, cool. I just had a quick second question, sorry. Just in terms of blood tests, in terms of when you go to the doctor and they check everything across the board and they go, oh, everything's normal, is that because, but you sort of feel there's a problem within yourself, is that because they're using a very standard amount but it may not be your standard? Is that the kind of, if you do you offer blood tests, and then is it kind of different the way you look at it?
Yeah, I love this question, Jess. It's fantastic. So absolutely. Unfortunately, like if you just get a blood test, the reference range is huge. So for an example, the reference rate, like the doctor's reference range. So let's take ferritin for an example, which is a storage iron. The reference range in some is like 25 to 200. Like that's and the reference range is based on an unhealthy population. People who go to the doctors because they're not well, get their blood test, and then this is the reference range. So if you're 30, you're technically good from a doctor's perspective. Does that make sense? Because you're still in that reference range, which they're going, like, I'll give you an example. Like, I'll try not to like give anyone's information out here, but like for an example, like I don't know if you can see that, possibly you can't, but the reference range is on the end. Yeah, you probably can't. Anyway, but the reference, if you got a blood test around it, the reference range is on the end, and it's that's what the doctors are looking at. If it's outside of that, they'll flag it. If it's not, they won't. But we want you, from a holistic perspective, to be sitting in an optimal range. So
Based on factors like your age, your lifestyle, that sort of thing into
exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So for example, a menstruating woman, they need to have ferritin of minimum 50. Minimum. Like I'm wanting it more like 80, 100. You know what I mean? And if you're heading into perimenopause, your hormonal, exactly, I want your thyroid to be basically perfect because yeah, so based on your age, your hormonal cycle, where that's, yeah, really important. So the doctors, unfortunately, yeah, they're not giving enough information. Like they're going on an unhealthy population and they're based on the reference range. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
It does. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
No worries. Welcome. Yeah. And Tanya?
Hello. Sorry, I'm on my phone and I can't find where to start the camera.
Oh, that's all right. No worries.
I'm lucky I found the raise the hand and the and the unmute button.
No worries.
My question was about the basal temperature test.
Yep.
Does that work if you're in menopause?
It's a very good question. I would probably still recommend doing it when you're in menopause because your pineal gland and your adrenal glands start taking over. So your ovaries, of course, is what produces your estrogen. But during menopause, that stops, that production of estrogen stops. But your pineal gland in your brain and then your ovaries, and so your adrenals start taking over. So I would still do it because it'll give it, it's not so much the progesterone that you'll get information for, but it will still tell us information about your thyroid and your adrenals.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So the temperature thing that you're talking about, you just get that from the chemist?
Yeah, any old chemist, any farmer. And I mean, there's better ones. There's things like Temp Drop, which is sort of more expensive and things like that. And that's sort of you wear it overnight. It's very accurate. But I find for most people, like so long as it's 2 decimal point oral thermometer,
Yeah.
that's really good information. That gives us very accurate information.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you. Good. And anyone else? Any other questions? No? All good. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining in and for your time on Friday afternoon. And yeah, I'll send this and I'll send some more information. And yeah, anyone's got questions, touch base.
Thank you, Sarah.
No worries. Have a lovely afternoon, everyone.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.